Hi everyone, my name is Matthew. Welcome to my Q&A for the Australia-New Zealand Fontan Advisory Committee. Just a quick little brief about myself. So I'm currently 32 and I had a Fontan and now have had a heart transplant. So my Q&A is going to be pretty heavily swayed towards transplant and transplant life. So just a quick, before I get into the questions, just a quick little, I suppose, introductory of my life and what I've been through. So basically I had an extracardiac Fontan when I was 2 in 1987. And then I'm pretty sure in the time frame from both talking to the registry and sort of just the time frame that I was the first person in Australia to actually have the Fontan revision. So I was actually, when I sort of needed that revision, there was a lot of questions up in the air and there was no real surgical team or hospital that really knew or had done it, knew what they were going to do. So myself and my family were possibly even looking at having it done overseas, but fortunately didn't need to go down that route and we had a good team organise what they were going to do here. So basically, my heart condition was basically a single ventricle, a double outlet right ventricle, so a hypoplastic right ventricle, large VSD, pulmonary atresia, aortic regurgitation, single ventricle circuit is pretty much the main thing that doesn't really work. It was discovered shortly after I was born, sort of started turning blue, parents started freaking out a little bit, and then finally, good old doctors come and save the day. And I've had a BT shunt when I was a day old or so, Fontan revision when I was 20, so really managed quite a long time with that, but I'll get more into that. So I'll start off with some questions. Basically, first question is, what did you find most challenging about growing up with the Fontan circulation from the young age, and what did yourself and your family do to help you meet those challenges? I suppose when I was really young, I didn't really think that I was that different, I suppose. I mean, like, I knew I was different and I had the scar to know I was different and, constant appointments and INRs and all that stuff. But didn't really think much of it. I suppose the challenges were really more on my parents in having to, raise and care for quite a sick child. Well, not even quite sick, just constant medical appointments. Back in the day, INRs were, they would fluctuate quite a lot, so it was hospital trips every week or 2 weeks to go to the children's to have an INR done. That took up a lot of Saturdays back in the day. And so, yeah, and otherwise, when I was still in primary school and stuff, I'd run around and try and play sport. I was usually in a position where I would be running a lot less than the other kids, I suppose. So playing sports, being on a defensive side rather than an offensive side or something like that. Or, just trying to limit, I suppose, the running around that I did, just because I wasn't quite as able as a lot of the other kids. I remember running around the school in like a cross-country run and just being at the back of the pack and then falling further and further behind, but really wanting to try. And I guess, back when I was quite young, I was sort of able to do that a bit. And then sort of health deteriorated a little bit from there, and as I went to high school and then started to sit out a lot more than actually even try and participate. So all through high school, it was really sitting out a lot more. So did your parents need to make other families aware of your condition at school? Was there a point where you tried to keep it a secret? If there was, why? If you did, yeah. So I didn't really ever keep it a secret. It's not something that I generally like to bring up, but certainly if I'm asked directly, or I find now it's a lot harder than it was when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I suppose it was like, yeah, I've had a heart surgery, and big deal sort of thing. Tell friends. Some people think it's cool, some not. In terms of making families aware at school, I think if I ever had a sleepover at friends, they would sort of tell the parents. My parents definitely told the schools. At primary school, my mum actually worked at the primary school, sort of knew the teachers on a professional level as well. So that sort of relationship helped a bit. And I remember there being difficulty around like school camps. So I know that my mum actually came on like our grade 6 camp, maybe 5 or one of those. And so she came on that camp, and I think she was invited on that for a number of reasons. But and then when I went to high school, the school was definitely told, because I'd had sort of an arrhythmia issue right at the end of primary school. So I didn't actually find this out till years later, but I always held it against my parents that I wasn't allowed to go on any of my high school trips, camps. Thought, oh, how dare you not let me go on school camps? But, I found out a couple of years ago now, which is many years after high school, that actually the school said to my parents, we don't want to take your child to the school camp because we can't accommodate if anything happens. Which, I mean, that sucks, but, whatever. Wasn't a huge deal back then. So, miss out on that, but it wasn't a massive deal. Has there been anything in the way of people around you that have handled certain situations relating to health or deterioration that really upset you? Not really. No. What support, if any, do you think you may have missed out on from your parents or caregivers? I think maybe being kicked out and given independence quicker is something I missed out on, maybe. I suppose, both of them, but mum especially, sort of, really want to help and care, and, which is not a bad thing. But, if anything, it's just that, they care more than, that's probably wrong, more than for my brothers, but no, it's different, I suppose, being a ill child. So I don't know the point I'm trying to make there. How did you go with school and were you able to complete your studies in a time frame that matched your peers? Yes and no. So the only reason it's a no is sort of, like I mentioned, I had a arrhythmia episode at the end of primary school, which my high school was told about. And then high school was fine, all the way until the end of year 11. And then I had another quite big arrhythmia episode. And that sort of kicked off the whole chain of events that eventually led to the Fontan revision. But basically at that point, I was sort of told by my cardiologist, okay, we want to do intervention. However, we will let you finish your studies. So then all of my year 12, that was literally the end of year 11. And then I think that was the time I was in hospital on Christmas Day. And so the end or the start of year 12, basically I was seeing my cardiologist a little bit more frequently, and they were sort of saying to me, please be stable for the year, and I was thinking the same thing. And then literally the last day of high school, I fell into an arrhythmia, literally finished my last day of high school, mark-up day, all that sort of stuff, celebrate with friends, go to the shops, get takeaway food and all that crap with friends, celebrate last day, get home, play some computer games, and then I'm like, I feel a bit funny. Go to hospital that night, and basically that was a massive arrhythmia episode, lasted for days, cardioverted multiple times, didn't work, and put on heaps of drugs, and then basically was very unwell for quite a few months, and basically couldn't sit my Year 12 exams. And so fortunately, very fortunately, I got derived exam scores. So I completed Year 12, just not quite the way it's normally done, but I ended up getting my inter score and completing that. So that went pretty well, but at same time frame, but slightly different. So, and then that sort of led to the downfall. Are there any tips you would share with teens about times during your studies? Yeah, so if there's any other teens out there, I suppose just study as hard as you can. High school is not the most important schooling, but it is definitely important. Finish high school, do as well as you can. Study in my opinion, what I did wrong was I would always cram. If you study in smaller blocks, because I had lots of concentration issues, if you religiously study every day or every other day for an hour or so, it's better than studying, once a week for 7 hours. Not only is that, just bad way of studying, but you remember it better by doing little blocks. And then also with your, if you are struggling a bit more with health, then you may actually be able to study with your poorer health, and so spread it out over many days. And then also, if you do need help, ask for it. Ask your school, see if you can get extra time on your exams. I didn't really look at it through high school, but definitely in university. There was, you'd go to the disability support services and they'll be like, oh, do you need extra time? Do you need breaks? Do you need this, that, through exams? So, if you need it, take it and talk to school about it. If you need help, get help. Yeah. How did you feel about leaving high school? Did you recall having different pictures of the future to your peers? Yes and no. I suppose there weren't really any other of my peers struggling with their health like I was. So, while they were all thinking about the future and going on to study and, some of them working and all that sort of stuff, I was more thinking about my health and whether I had a future. Yeah. Did your physical limitations or lifestyle impact your friendships? Definitely impact. I don't know whether it was a really negative impact or not. But yeah, it definitely did impact a lot of the friendships. And I suppose the way it did was just change the dynamic of friendships a little bit. One of the most frustrating things to me, I suppose, before I go on to that, basically, I always tried to go out and, be with friends as much as possible. Even when my energy levels were super low, basically, try and go out, be social, be with friends, because, that helps with your mental health as well, especially when you are sick and all that sort of stuff. Being with friends is good. But I suppose it was wanting to be with friends, and then consciously being like, oh, am I bringing down their enjoyment for this because they're having to wait for me? And I suppose I was really fortunate in that, when we were going out somewhere or something, we'd be walking around and I'd be a lot slower and that sort of thing. I had really good friends who would slow down and wait for me, and, if we went out, or away rather, I've got a friend with a beach house down in Anglesey, and we'd go down there, and quite often I'd be like, really struggling, really short of breath and that sort of thing, and a lot of the time they'd slow down and walk with me, or one or two of them would fall back, And so yeah, definitely did impact friendships, but I think that I was fortunate in that I had some pretty understanding friends, so that definitely helped. But the physical limitations definitely did impact things. There was definitely a number of things that I couldn't do and didn't do because of my health. So yeah. So how did I go with approaching uni, and what did that experience mean to you? Finishing uni, I think you can see my degree up there. Finishing uni was a massive accomplishment for me. Actually finishing it. While I was studying, it was very difficult. I went through a lot. My 3-year degree took me 7-ish years to study for. The last 2 or so years of that study, I was on the transplant waiting list. But finishing it was a massive accomplishment. That's arguably, the proudest thing that I have. The most proud, yeah. Yeah, massive. And what exactly is the question? Yeah, how did I go with approaching it? Yeah, basically I ended up applying for a couple of different things that sounded interesting. I ended up doing a health science degree, and I ended up applying. So I think there's another question down here. Yep, the very next question. Did you access any special consideration or student support channels at school or uni? So the way that I applied for uni was I applied through the Special Entry Access Scheme, or SEAS, and if there are any other older kids out there that are looking at going to uni or finishing high school, definitely look into SEAS. Basically you lodge a SEAS application and you say, this is how my studies are negatively impacted by my health condition, and then they look at your enter score, which for me was below what the course I wanted to do needed, and they look at your statement and they say, you know what, this kid's been through a lot, we'll offer him a place. And so it's not a guarantee, obviously. Really study, try and get as high an enter as you can, but that definitely helped me get into university. And then, like I was saying before, register yourself with disability services, and if you do have a bad month or a bad year, or your health starts deteriorating a little bit, then they, first of all, your name is on their system, they might know your face, and then when you go to them and say, hey, this is happening, I need some help, then they can usually help you in some ways. I also found that my lecturers were very accommodating. I would say to them, oh, I've had a bad month, or I was in hospital, or this or that. They'd go, cool, how long do you need to do this assignment? Or, cool, we can make some arrangements for something else. I think I completed a subject like 2 years after it was already failed, and managed to get a pass for it by talking to the guy that ran the course, and resubmitting our work and chatting to him about it, and he was like, oh yeah, that's really good, what was going on at the time? Oh, okay, yeah, we'll change that. So they're people, and a lot of them are compassionate, and if they can help you, they will. So definitely talk to them about what's going on in your life. You don't have to go into as much detail or whatever if it makes you uncomfortable, but they are more often than not there to help. Any other tips for CHDs who might be looking at uni courses? I think I've covered most everything. Anything else in specifics? No. When you went into Fontan failure, what was life like, and what did you do to help you cope? Life was pretty average in terms of, I guess, physical limitation. Struggle with a bit of mental health as well when you're really sick like that. I struggled with activities of daily living, putting my pants on, putting socks on, putting shoes on, brushing my teeth, having a shower, all that stuff was a struggle. Getting up the stairs to my room was a struggle. Yeah, shortness of breath. It's almost at the point now where I forget, or I've completely forgotten how bad things really were. Occasionally I've had a cold or something and that might knock you out a bit. Then you're like, oh man, like I feel really run down. But then you remember, or then you think, oh, was I like this, all those years ago? And yeah, I bought an electric toothbrush because I couldn't brush my teeth anymore. So, you'd sit there brushing your teeth and you'd be panting. I'd get short of breath having a conversation with someone. So, it was pretty affected. I would catch up with friends and go out and stuff like that. And basically, I would do nothing all day and sort of like, save that energy for going out, because I knew that if I did something in the morning or something at all in the day, then I would be ruined and we had to go out. And then I would spend the next, regardless of doing it in the morning or in the evening, I'd spend a day or two or longer recovering after that as well. And, one of the things that I really noticed after transplant was back-to-back long days, complete exhaustion. You just keep doing it and you don't think about it. You just have, 12-hour days full of running around and being nuts, and it's fine, which is pretty crazy. How important has mental health support been on your Fontan to transplant journey and post-transplant? I haven't had a lot of mental health support. I definitely have had some. I think, attached to the transplant services is a psychologist, and I, catch up with her pretty frequently, and that's really good to, occasionally download some stuff that's going on in your life and talk about things. But, the service is definitely there. With my mental health, usually I've been able to get sufficient support through just, seeing friends and doing other stuff like that. Sort of, if you're having a down period, that tends to perk me up more than, really needing a lot of support services. The post-transplant stuff is definitely there. The pre-transplant stuff is there. A lot of my transition phase was sort of out of the realm of the children's, so I think around the time when my Fontaine was failing, I didn't really have as much support as probably what is there now. Yeah. What role did your parents play, and how did your family approach your transplant? Parents were huge. The support from my parents has been massive, and my brothers as well. It was a very hard time. So the support from them, was, very good. My mum essentially was my carer post-transplant, and you need that carer for at least 3 to 6 months post-transplant. She ended up taking long service leave. I think all of my mum's long service leave, pretty much, well, not all of it, but the vast majority of it has been taken caring for me, which is a massive sacrifice to make. And that was both when I needed the Fontaine revision, and post-transplant. So yeah, that's that's massive support. How did the role of your parents change when you took independence and management for your cardiac care? It's changed a lot now. I'm definitely a lot more independent than I was. I think I really hung on to that PA, mum PA, personal assistant, for a long time. Hey mum, can you make an appointment? Or, we're going to the appointment X date. And And then it sort of slowly became a thing of, oh, I've got this appointment and I don't want you to take a day off work because it's just going to be boring and a waste of time anyway, so don't bother. Not a complete waste of time, but that's just, long days at the hospitals, which I'm sure everyone's familiar with. So, it really sort of, the way that I sort of took over my health management, I suppose, was going, okay, I don't really want mum to take a day off work, and I don't really want to have to go to this appointment anyway, but I have to. I have to, but no one else has to. So that's really where I think in myself, where the stem of my transition from parent care to me taking care of everything really changed. The last time both of my parents came to one of my appointments, I'm pretty sure it was to meet the surgeons pre-transplant and talk about that. That's a pretty big appointment, so yeah, mum definitely came to a lot of other appointments post-transplant, but, and sort of, it was probably a 4 or 5 year transition where it was, do you want me to come to the appointment? No. Do you want me to come to the appointment? Yeah, maybe this one, but, now it's definitely, I think it's more of a, do you want me to come to when it's asked, do you want me to come to an appointment? Or like, can I come to an appointment? And it's like, no, I don't even want to be there either, so don't. Not in a bad way.